That was Friday when the Eskom board appeared before the Scopa committee to account on those 23 recommendations they made in 2019. We asked the question tonight, what's the role really of political leadership in preventing Eskom from failing? Here to unpack this and more, I'm joined by the Chairperson of Parliament's Committee for Public Enterprises, Khayalethu Magaxa. You can be a part of the conversation as well tonight on WhatsApp, 072-110-5584, or you can tweet us at Newzroom 405. But Magaxa, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and for joining us tonight on In Focus.
Good evening, Mdluli, and good evening to your listeners.
The board at Eskom is blaming government for inept leadership. Business entities are blaming the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa as far as making the right choices on how that board is managed and that executive at Eskom is managed. So there are divergent views on, I suppose one would call, the policy orientation on this particular state asset. Do you think this is at the heart of the Eskom's inability to keep the lights on?
Well, I think what is important first is to understand and try to put things into its proper context. I don't think it's proper to refer to the recent utterances by one individual from the board of Eskom as an Eskom board's position in relation to their understanding of the role by the president or by the ANC-led government. I don't think it's proper. It's just one individual whom I think was seeking an attention and she received it. Now we know her now. Nobody knew her before. But the reality of the situation is that Eskom is having quite a number of stakeholders, including political kind of areas where the accountability is taking place. We also part of the political role players as the state and I mean the legislative arm of the state, members of parliament. On the other hand, we've got the shareholder, which is the government, of course, led by the minister and the president, and we have the board. We have what the executive. All those people have to play a particular role in order to turn the problems and deal with the problems and turn around that entity. One has to understand where we're coming from. The reality of the situation is that we are dealing with an entity that has coming from a serious problem from the previous administration, and the current administration is trying to reverse those problems. That's one important thing that South Africans must appreciate.
Now, so are you saying as Parliament, you are of the view that that exchange is not representative of the view of the board at Eskom?
Yes, because we have not seen anyone, we have not received any statement or public presentation by the board in relation to what Busisiwe Mavuso said. We're still expecting them to come up. It's either they associate or disassociate themselves with that statement. But as far as we know, only one person was asked to leave and he was not followed by anyone. And the meeting between the Scopa continued with the board. Therefore, to me, where I'm sitting at the moment is that those utterances are not a true reflection of how the board understands the situation.
Yeah. So where, in your view, then, should we be placing the failure of Eskom to keep the lights on if it is not at the door of the ANC-led government?
Well, it's a combination of factors. One, the question of state capture, which has contributed massively to put Eskom where it is, cannot be solely put on the government. There are a lot of people who are queuing at the Zondo Commission who are not necessarily coming from the ANC, including from the executive. Therefore, you can't, and the ANC has acted in relation to the problems emanated that affected certain individuals at Eskom. And that's why we had that commission appointed by the president to look comprehensive at what contributed to the mess. And on top of that, the ANC-led government is still committed at dealing with those people, including some people who are political, who have been asked to step aside because of the same problem. Therefore, at least it will be unfair to just swipe by saying it's an ANC government, as if that entity is only dealt only by the government. There are other stakeholders that are playing a crucial role and who have played a crucial role to the demise of Eskom outside the ANC-led government.
Yeah. So,
well, of course, the government has to take responsibility, and is taking that responsibility, because the government at the end of the day is the government of the ANC. Therefore, we take the responsibility and we act on that.
Now, so you'd have, for example, the situation of procuring of extra energy at Eskom, which is part of the challenges that we're having. We don't have enough. We can procure enough so that when particular power stations shut down, we are still able to keep the lights on. And those who are responsible really for procuring that will tell you that it is not Eskom's responsibility per se, but the challenge is sitting with government, because that is, I suppose, where the money is supposed to come from to assist Eskom in being able to procure more energy to be able to meet the needs of a growing economy like ours. So would you not say then that precisely is the challenge where it sits right now? It needs to sit at the door of government.
Well, Mdluli, the situation that is frustrating us as a legislative arm of the state, which is parliamentarians, is that people are using the problem at Eskom in order to advance their business interest. And some parties are using the problem at Eskom in order to advance their ideological problems. Some people are ignoring all the steps that are being taken by the state, by the government, in order to resolve the problem that we have inherited from the previous administration, by pushing their own business interest that will put Eskom into a very weak entity that will, in actual fact, put the energy of this country in the hands of private sector. Some political parties that are for privatization, they want us to just move. If, for example, you hear the debate around the IPPs vis-a-vis the coal. What is at play there is ideological.
Yeah.
Some people want to exploit this problem as an opportunity to destroy Eskom so that we depend solely on the private sector for lighting and any other form of electric generation in the country. And to me, I don't think that is helping the situation. Yeah. The current government has spent massive money to build Metupi, to build Kusile, and to continue resolving problems at Koeberg nuclear station. Some will use all sorts of books in order to divert us from advancing that particular program, in order to push us to something that is not sustainable for the future of energy in the country.
So there are, for example, recommendations that were made as early as 2019. I mean, among some of them, there are about 23, the committee saying 7 of them are on green. I'm not quite sure which ones, but 14 are on amber. One would, for example, talk about several serious design faults which were identified even as early as 2019, which we are still talking about today. What would you say is behind that? Because I'm sure those are one of the recommendations that have not yet been cleared.
The problem of people who are playing an oppositional role, they think that when you make an announcement, it's like pressing a button on and off, and you will see the light. They just ignore that there are processes. The president has been making announcements about improving and adding more access to energy in the country. But people, they expect that something just like lightning must happen. And that's not how things happen. There is a commitment in this country to improve and add more source of energies either than the one that we are having at Medupi and Kusile and so on. There are IPPs that have been announced by the president, and there are already processes to engage. Certain municipalities have already started exploiting that kind of a process. Therefore, it's unfair to pretend as if the announcement were just made in 2019 and there's nothing that is being taking place currently.
So what's the position then of the Parliament committee on what happened on Friday? Are you going to be taking any action yourself as Parliament? Are you going to be jumping in as the portfolio committee?
In relation to?
To the matter of what happened on Friday.
About the board?
And the behavior of, as you put it, the member of the board.
Well, that should be in the jurisdiction of the board itself. The person who disrupted or who misbehaved, I don't know what the definition of what she was doing. It will be the chair of the scoper who knows what propelled or how was the behavior of the person. I think both the scoper, including the board, has to take steps in relation to that. We, as a portfolio committee for public enterprise, were not part of that particular session. And we only saw, just like anybody on the social media and media, it's not for us to make any pronouncement in relation to that. Of course, we condemn any disruption or misbehavior in our session. We believe that people who are appointed in this board are matured and cool-headed professionals who understand their role.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much, Thabo Magaxa, for coming through this evening. That is the Chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises, Khayalethu Magaxa. We'll continue still looking at the power utility next. How close are we to a complete collapse of that utility? Can we hold on? And how much more can it be sustainable?